Hello and welcome, everyone. I'm Barbara Tien, and welcome to Project Kin's premiere first inaugural episode of Emma Cox and Emma Explores. This is a wonderful new series we're delighted to introduce today and will be recurring each month. This program will be recorded, as obviously you are watching now in a recording if you're not with me here today, and will be available to all Project Kin members. All you got to do is pop over to projectkin.org and sign up. All we ask is an email address, and you will be on our list to receive all of our recordings as quickly as possible after our programs conclude, along with all of our resources and materials shared. Again, I'm delighted to welcome Emma, who has been a longtime friend, supporter, and advisor to Project Kin since pretty much the very beginning. We have been chatting and realized that there was a wonderful opportunity to fit in a new series to really talk about the adventure of exploring one's own genealogy. And as I described in the lead up to this event, it's in some ways a little bit like our Kathy's Corner, in that Kathy Stone is a professional photo organizer turning her talents to her own photo collection. And in this way, Emma is a professional genealogist turning her talents to her own family stories. In this series, she'll be talking about the many discoveries, mysteries, and surprises she's had along her own journey into genealogy. So I will turn it over to her shortly at the conclusion of this program. Oh, let me just tell you now. I have a little secret coming up. I'll be announcing to our community in the coming weeks. But starting in September, we will be collaborating with the Society of Genealogists and the Society for One Place Studies in the UK to produce a series of events, a Project Kin events, that will be kind of an international extension of the program to start when that program that runs from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. UK time concludes. So starting our Pacific time, we will run another series each day, just one a day, because, we got to sleep too. And I'll be soliciting proposals to speak during that series. So stay tuned for that. The Society of One Place Studies, essentially genealogy of a place, is something that absolutely fascinates me. And I'm delighted to help promote that kind of a program on our side of the planet, and to do my part to support it. So with that, thanks for your support. So with that, let me turn it over to Emma and this wonderful program we're excited about today. Go ahead, Emma.
Thank you. I'll just start sharing my screen so everyone can start to see what I'm going to talk about today. And let's go into my presentation and move that out the way. And there we are. Hopefully everybody can see me. So today we're talking about stories, mysteries, and fame. As Barbara has said, this is going to be a new series once a month. And basically, I've been doing my own family history for a long, long time now, for probably 30 plus years. And along the way, I've made some very, very interesting discoveries. And I continue to do that. Even as recently as yesterday, I found out something new. So a little bit more about me. I'm Emma Cox, so I'm based in Kent in England. I'm a family historian and genealogist, and I'm a Huguenot descendant via my father's mother. So that means some of my ancestors, one particular line, came across, they were Protestant refugees who came from France to England back in the 17th century. I help people find out about their ancestors. I do things like creating family trees and charts if people want help with their DNA, and also finding living relatives and adoptions, potentially finding parents, edit and write books, and take people on tours of the places their ancestors lived and worked. I also host a podcast. It's called Journeys into Genealogy, and it's been going for about 3.5 years now. There are 85 plus episodes, and I interview experts and people with interesting stories to tell, and I'm always looking for people who would like to share theirs. So I want to talk about my family tree now. I'm just going to move a couple of the controls out the way so that I can actually see the screen properly from here. There we go. Let's move those. So this gentleman on the right is not William the Conqueror. He's just a little illustration there. But I actually do descend from William the Conqueror. Let's go back just a moment. And I've got lots and lots of different people in my family tree. So over the years, there are quite a few people who are members of parliament, so politicians, barristers, and the clergy. So that could be people who are a vicar, a bishop, an archbishop, or even people who took more lowly roles than those from the 1800s and 1900s. There's also, slightly off subject, somebody called William Catley, who basically was responsible for the Cattleya orchids. He provided the funding for an expedition, and when they came back, they were actually named after him. So if you ever see a Cattleya orchid, that is why they are so called. Today, we're going to be talking about fame, famous ancestors, and royalty. And I'd like to introduce you to Mary. So Mary Christian, on my father's side, she's my paternal 6 times great grandmother, and she's what is known as a gateway ancestor. I don't know how familiar you are with that term. I'll explain it in just a moment. But she was my first discovery regarding a royal connection. And I have found more people since then. But basically, she was the one who got me interested in royalty within my family. So a gateway ancestor, that's basically the link between you and somebody who's noble or royal, or a person who can trace their ancestry back to a king or queen, or a person who can trace their ancestry back to a very different country, for example. It could be the Pilgrim Fathers, could be the first settlers, somebody who basically is the link between 2 different places or 2 different significant different lines. So Mary was my 6 times great grandmother. And the first time I actually found out about her ancestry was I found something called a royal descent. And this is an example of one here. So if I show you, I'll put my little pointer on. It says here that this is the descent of Colonel George Vanbrugh Law of the late Madras Cavalry from the blood royal of England. So down at the bottom here, we've got Mary Christian. So she married on the 27th of June, 1740, the Right Reverend Edmund Law, who was the Bishop of Carlisle. And their son was Ewan Law, and I actually descend from him. That's why that's highlighted there. And if I look back in the history here, you can see that Mary is the daughter of John Christian and his wife, Bridget Senhouse. And going back up this line here, this goes through Senhouse and then Huddleston. This is all in the northern part of England in a place called was Cumberland, which is now called Cumbria. Westmoreland and Cumberland became Cumbria. And it goes back to Joyce Prickly and John Huddleston there, and then we go back on this side. It's just slightly strange the way it's displayed, and then back Huddleston and Joan Stapleton, and then the De La Poles, and then we go further back, the Staffords and the De Clares and Joan of Acre, and then we're back to Edward I. So I can directly trace my ancestry back to Edward I via this lady, Mary Christian. So that's why I call her a gateway ancestor. So she is the first link for me to get into that particular line. Now, this all comes from a book called The Royal Lineage of Our Noble and Gentle Families, together with their paternal ancestors, by a gentleman called Joseph Foster. Turn that off, and I'm going to click on this. This is going to open up a copy of the book that I found online. And I have a particular reason for showing you this, because I think this is a very, very good copy of it. So if we go down within this, in the front of this book, it's actually got a family register. So someone has taken the time to actually fill this out with all the births, when they were born, where they were born, the marriages, over a couple of pages, and then there's an obituary in there. So this is obviously a personalized copy of that particular book. And then you can go through, and if I just skip down a few pages, you can see there are lots of different people on here. And just this person here is the Reverend Henry Cumberland Stewart, and incumbent meaning that he was a vicar in Rugby in Yorkshire, and it's got his descendants there. And then it actually will give the details It's not just a chart, you get the details actually within that. Sometimes you'll get family crests. There's all sorts of different things actually contained within this. And when I looked at this again recently, I found about 5 or 6 different people who all just descend from the same family within it, and that all have probably living ancestors coming off the bottom, or living descendants coming off the bottom. Let's pop that one away for the moment and come back here. Going back to Mary. So I've never really been able to find a great deal out about her, other than I know she was quite young when she got married, and she married Edmund Law, who ended up being the Bishop of Carlisle. However, recently I found this, apologies for the not particularly good picture here, I'm going to show you a better one in a moment, but this is a book that I discovered that she had written, or was written about her, when she got married. And I thought it's absolutely lovely, so just wanted to share it with you. Oops, go back one. So she was 18 when she got married, and he was 37. So there was a considerable age difference. He was a clergyman. He wasn't a bishop at the time. And this book here, let's go down a page at a time and you can see it. Let's get rid of that one. It's beautifully illustrated. So April the 28th, 1740 is the date actually shown within this. And it's actually written in here. You've got love, joy, peace, long suffering, goodness, gentleness, faith, meekness, and temperance. It then will give an actual description of Mary and her character. So Mary Christian was the daughter of John Christian, Esquire, of Unrig Hall in the county of Cumberland, and Bridget, his wife, daughter of Henry Senhouse, Esquire, of Netherhall in the same county. She was born on the 19th of March, 1722, and at the age of 18 became the wife of the Reverend Edmund Law, rector of Greystoke, afterwards Bishop of Carlisle. 3 out of their numerous family added the lustre of their personal achievements to their honourable name. John, the eldest son, became Bishop of Elphin. Edward was the Lord Chief Justice Ellenborough, and George Henry was made Bishop of Chester and afterwards translated to Bath and Wells. The gentle and exemplary life of Mrs. Law was perfected in a short time, and her death must be considered as early rather than untimely. She died on the 1st of March, 1762. And it talks a little bit more about her and her resolutions. So she made these resolutions on the day of her marriage. And I'm just going to read them out to you. Some rules I resolve to observe through the assistance of the Almighty when I am a wife. I resolve never to contradict my dear husband without it being quite necessary, and then with the greatest good nature I am mistress of. To serve God more sincerely than I have done in the state I am now about to leave, and to lead a life suitable to the blessed calling of my husband. Never to fret or fall into a passion about small matters, but to have always a cheerful heart, knowing my blessings must much exceed any troubles that can possibly befall me, and in all dangers to commit myself to family and an all-wise providence, and then be easy about the event. I likewise resolve to lay aside all fondness for dress, but to be always exactly neat and clean. I resolve to be very active, and never for the sake of saving myself a walk to neglect anything, though it be never so great a trifle. I resolve to be very frugal, and never to put my husband to any needless expense. I resolve to be very kind to my servants, as well to their souls as their bodies, and always to give exact orders, and never to be in a passion if they not be executed. I resolve to treat my friends kindly, but never extravagantly, and to be full as glad to see his relations as my own. Thus would I live, thus would I die, and when this world I leave, to heaven I'd fly. And I thought that's such a lovely document to find all about her, isn't it? It's amazing. And to actually see the illustrations there and everything. And the only other thing I found about her was a little embroidery, which I think was done by one of her daughters. But from 1740 to actually have a document like that existing is amazing. Right. So I want to go back to royal descents. You saw the one I did earlier on, which was one I found in a printed book. And I thought, well, actually, it would be nice to actually personalize that and make one for us. So I took all the information that was in the original one and have created my own version of this. Just going to move you around again, out the way, up the top. And you can see that at the bottom of this screen, we have Mary Christian here. And we've got the same information going back up the screen. I have highlighted another person here who is her grandmother, because she is another gateway ancestor. There's a separate line that takes off from her that actually also has a royal descent. And then this is it, which continues down to my grandparents here. And what I've done recently, actually, is I've created a copy of this when we're talking about trying to encourage younger people to be interested in family history. I did it for my cousin's daughter. We're going to see them at the weekend, and I've actually printed off a copy of this for her with her parents' name and her at the bottom. And so, because last time we spoke, she was quite excited about that and was wanting to tell her friends about it. Thought creating something for her, which was actually personalized, would be a nice little present. So this is the first one. This one, you can see, goes back to Edward I. But I have a second one. So Mary Christian, going back via Eleanor B, and then Agnes Lowther down the bottom here. I will just put my pointer back on again. You can see Eleanor's here. And then this line goes back to Edward III. And on this line, there are various people. There's at least 4. There may be others. These are the 4 that I've identified so far, that they all have royal descents of their own. So there may well be other links going back. So this is pretty much an ongoing project. So this is the state I've got to at the moment. But I really enjoyed the process of actually creating this and personalizing this and bringing it up to date. And I made sure at the bottom, for anybody who was looking at it, that there was a little note saying there what it actually meant and where people were. So Mary descends from both her grandparents. So we've got Eleanor here and Humphrey. And I just want to go off the subject slightly, because the Christian family of themselves are really quite interesting. There's some quite well-known people amongst them. And some of you may well have heard of this next person. So does Fletcher Christian ring any bells for anybody? No? Have you heard of Mutiny on the Bounty?
Yeah, Mutiny on the Bounty.
Mutiny on the Bounty. So Fletcher Christian. I have to say, when I was growing up, there was a film called Mutiny on the Bounty with Mel Gibson, who played Fletcher Christian, and he looked very good in that. And I never realised that Fletcher Christian was a relative. And I managed to actually find this book. So Captain Bligh and Mr. Christian, The Men and the Mutiny, by Richard Hoff. And in it, there's an actual description of Fletcher himself. He was 21 years old when he first met William Bligh, 5'8" tall, dark-haired, handsome and cheerful, strong and well-built, and slightly bow-legged, according to Bligh's own description of him. And even on this one, on the right-hand side of the screen here, it shows some more information about the family. So it says at the time of Fletcher's birth, they were connected by marriage to the other prominent Manx Cumberland families, such as the Senhouses, Curwins and Dixons. And the Christians themselves actually came from the Isle of Man. And I was really fortunate, because within this book was this, a complete family tree for the Christian family. And it's like, I had no idea when I first opened it up. So on here, we've got Mary, who we just talked about, with the royal blood royal, and then Fletcher. So Mary is Fletcher's aunt. So he is my, if I try and get this right, he's my 7th cousin, or first cousin. I can't remember. I'm not 100% on that, but he is a direct relative of mine here. And we can actually see Mary's parents on the right here, John. And then this is the Christian family, and they were of the Isle of Man and Ewanrig in Cumberland. And these people, several of them, were what they call deemsters. And a deemster, I never knew this before I started researching them, is a judge. So they were the ones who provided the law on the Isle of Man for the time for several generations going back here. This is 1422 all the way down to 1745. They were involved in ruling the Isle of Man. So this was a delight to actually find this within this book. So secondhand books are amazing. You never know what you're actually going to find within them. So if there's something that covers a county you're interested in, or a topic, or a name, or something like that, it's always worthwhile having a look and just seeing what's contained within it. And another person on this family line is a name of a man by the name of Ewan Christian, who lived between 1814 and 1895. And he was an architect. And there's a famous gallery in London called the National Portrait Gallery, and he designed that. It's actually recently been redesigned, part of it, and reopened, and a lot of churches. And when I say a lot of churches, I do mean a lot of churches. He was vice president and then president of the Royal Institute of British Architects, architect to the ecclesiastical commissioners who looked after all the churches, and consulting architect to the charity commissioners. He did 90 new churches and 1,300 restorations, alterations, and additions. It's just absolutely amazing how many he did. And I didn't know this until I started looking at this recently. This is one of the churches that is near to me. So it's called St. James's Church in Tunbridge Wells in Kent. And a family friend is one of the current church wardens. So there's these lovely little links when you start going around, and oh, amazing. So that's Ewan. Now, I wanted to include this one here because this is slightly different. So I know that quite a few people listening to this are going to be in America. So I wanted to put something in here that was more relevant to you. So this is a royal descent for somebody done a few generations ago. But this goes back, and this is very significant because of this name here, Harlekenden. I don't know if anybody's come across the name Harlekenden in their family tree. This was for a Canadian client of mine, and he descends from these Harlekendens, and they were significant because they were one of the first people who came across, and they weren't, I don't know if they were the part of the Pilgrim Fathers, but they were around about the same time. And as you can see on this tree, this can go straight back, and this goes further back than Edward I and Edward III, who are here, and goes straight back to Alfred the Great. So if you can connect into these people in your tree, you've definitely got royal ancestry yourself. So that's something that's worth actually investigating for any American people watching this. Now, my actual client, he could trace his ancestors back as well, or I traced them for him, to several different ones of William the Conqueror's knights in the 1060s. So obviously with 1066 and thereafter. So I think he had 3 or 4 of William the Conqueror's knights actually within his family tree. And some of the first settlers in Boston and various different people. His tree is fascinating. So we've been talking about ancestry a little while ago. So I wanted to actually bring it a little bit more up to date. Some of you may recognize the person shown at the bottom right-hand side of the screen. Does anybody know who that is? So she was known very affectionately as the Queen Mother. So she was the mother of Queen Elizabeth II of England. On this tree, you can see that she goes back up this line here. And this is her line as well. So that's her going down to the Queen and to Charles III. And this is my line. And they go back to John Parker Moseley and Elizabeth Bailey. So my grandmother would have been 5th cousin to the Queen, which would have made her very, very happy to have known that. And she was the lady that I did the previous descent for. So my father is 6th cousin to the King, and I am technically 7th cousin to his son William. I'm 6th cousin once removed to the current King. Now, this came from Roots Tech relatives, which is something which can be quite useful, but you also do need to be very wary of it because people put some very strange relationships on there. So obviously these people are royalty, so their children are very, very well known, but some people have actually put in strange children into this and put themselves descending off strange children. So you need to actually just look at things carefully when you're actually using a tool such as roots text relatives. And this line goes back to Mosley's. So there's a gentleman called Max Mosley who was involved with Formula One. He's no longer with us. He descends from the same line, but not Dr. Michael Mosley, who has made the headlines in England. And I don't know if it's crossed across to America, because he died quite recently after he unfortunately lost his way in heat stroke in Greece a couple of weeks ago. So they've got the same surname, but they're not related. But I am related to this line here, and they come off these people up here. I just want to talk a little bit more about Family Search and Relative Finder, who I alluded to there. So this is Mary Mosley, the daughter of the Reverend John Peploe Mosley of Rolleston Hall. And I want to just show you Relative Finder for anybody who hasn't actually seen it, to just show you what it looks like. If you aren't already logged in, it'll prompt you to. Now, I could choose to search by Mosley if I wanted to here. It happens to be the first one that comes up. So if I click on this one, it actually shows the relationship of me to the Queen Mother there. And then it actually gives more information on all of these people here. However, please be very careful about this, because it's not necessarily right. Have a look at this as a way of finding out information and places to explore further, and check that things are correct, because I found information on here that looks almost too good to be true sometimes, and then you look at it and you think, not sure, and some of it I'm still trying to work my way through. But it's quite a good way of doing this. And what you can also do is you can download a PDF of this here, which gives you a slightly squashed view, but it's something that you can actually keep, and then you can refer to it. And one of the things I liked on here as well is it tells you how it goes back. So this goes from father to mother, father, mother, father, and then you can see father, mother, mother, father, mother, mother, father, father. So you can see how the name changes as it goes back across the generations. And that's just a picture of that one there. So I was talking to Barbara before doing this and working out the topics to talk about, and I said that I had found quite a few famous relatives and people, and I've started to actually trying to go through them and work out how they're related to me and how they're related to each other. So what I've done is I've put together this spreadsheet, and I'll show you a little bit more about that in a moment, but just to explain a little bit about it. So I've put people's names in there, and then how they're related to me from the information that I found so far. MRCA is most recent common ancestor, so that is where we join up, however many generations back it is. And then the family lines that people come down, so the surnames of the family lines and when it changes to a different surname. And I found this is a really useful way of trying to keep track of things. So I can see that Buster Keaton comes off 2 different lines here. And this is going Catley, Handyside, Baird, then Bannatyne and Ramsey. And then the second one, which is a slightly more distant relationship, that's a 13th cousin, is Von Blom, Fitzgerald, Martin and Thomas. Now I have done quite a lot of exploration of those 3 and a bit of that one. And I know those 2 and a bit of that one, and I don't know very much about those 2. So one of the things about having this is it's actually helping me take my own lines back further if the information is correct. And I've got a space here to actually add notes within it. Actually, I'm going to go back to that one, and I'm just going to actually show you it. So this is the live spreadsheet here. So I can sort and filter and everything. And what I found interesting was then you can actually see who comes down the same line. So you can see here we've got Carrie Fisher and Rosa Parks, Theodore Roosevelt, and all apparently descending from the same group of people. However, this does need clarification and confirmation, because there are times where It might be that it comes from one line where somebody's married more than once. It could be that the wife has got 2 different husbands and it goes down 2 different surnames that way, or it could be the husband's had 2 different wives. So it could also be that it is completely incorrect. So these basically are areas that I want to now explore further. Also on here, I've done things where I've included people who are my direct ancestors as well. So you can see there are quite a lot of people on here. So I've put the current king and the former queen and put them on there and said where I found the information from. I've got Oliver Cromwell on there, and that's from my own research. So this is a useful place to keep everything, and then to write notes as to what I found and to actually prove, or in some cases I may well disprove some of these, because some of them are not 100% right. And also when you use things like family search, you do have the opportunity to then go in and actually make changes if you want to. So some of the different tools and websites that I've used include Family Search, as I mentioned, and Roots Tech Relatives. I don't know if anybody attended Roots Tech earlier on this year. I know Barbara did various talks about Roots Tech, and they have the opportunity for you to actually connect with relatives whilst it's on. So it's only whilst it's on, or a bit before and a little bit after, and they will tell you how they think you're related. But do, as I say, check things out just to make sure that things do look correct. Relative Finder, as I said, that's based on the same information as Family Search, so the same caveats apply with that one. The Peerage, I don't know if anybody has come across a site called the Peerage. I'll just start that one up and you can see what it's like. So on here, you can actually go in and you can search for a surname. So if I search on here for Mosley, send anyway, ignore that it's not secure. And I can see that I've got Max Mosley on there. And where are we on here? It's a little bit further down. So this is the Max Mosley I mentioned earlier on, who was involved in Formula One. What you can do with this is you can step back. So we've got him being the son of Oswald, and then another Oswald, a Tonman, another Oswald, they like the name, and yet another Oswald. And then we go back to John Parker Mosley and Elizabeth Bailey. So this is another way of confirming information that's on here. There are occasional errors, and I did actually point one out to the person who created this website, and he's actually updated that one since then. But this is a really good thing, because actually this gives you a lot of living people within here as well. So you can actually find out a lot of information about people's children. The Internet Archive. So the Internet Archive can be a great resource for websites that don't exist any longer, if somebody has actually taken a copy of them. So for example, some people might not keep a family history website anymore, but they might have saved it to the Internet Archive, or someone else might have done that. So it's always worthwhile having a look on there and just seeing what's actually available. Now, the British Newspaper Archive, that's a paid website. So what you can do is go in there and actually have a look for any mentions of your relatives or potential relatives. I don't know if people are familiar with that. If they aren't, I will just show you what it looks like. So let's just sign in. And if I look up Max Mosley, it's just using as an example. So he was age 39, a student. He was fined for obstructing a policeman in the execution of his duty. But within this, you can also search for family notices. So this will actually give you things where people are actually births, marriages, and deaths. So this is, I can't remember how much this is a year. It's not expensive, but the information contained within it is something that you're unlikely to be able to find elsewhere. Some of it is available via Find My Past, if anybody has a subscription to that, but the subscription to the British Newspaper Archive on its own is actually better. And newspapers.com, that'll be familiar to quite a few of you because that is part of Ancestry. So that, again, that has American newspapers, it has newspapers from the UK. And one I haven't put on here, which is actually worthwhile considering because it has unexpected items on there, is one called Trove. And that is an Australian newspaper website. So basically it's an archive. And I was talking with somebody recently, I interviewed the head of the Society of Australian Genealogists, Ruth Graham, and she was saying that things like people who fought in the wars in South Africa, South Africans will be mentioned on Trove as well. So there's all sorts of reasons for searching Trove, as well as searching things you might be more familiar with. And let's not forget good old Google. Just put in a name that you're looking for. You can also set up a Google alert. I don't know if anybody's done that. If you just look up Google alerts, and you can save them as many as you want and have them reported to you as frequently as you want. So it could be a particular name. I've actually got things like eBay alerts as well. I am interested in finding books that one of my ancestors, he was a publisher, that he has. And so I get an alert from eBay, which tells me whenever something comes up that he has printed. And the Google alerts come up and tell me when Emma Cox is mentioned online, or when DNA or family history and things like that. And standard Google searches, again, have a look for those. The Hathi Trust is another thing that's worth doing. There's some really good books that are actually saved on there, and the optical character recognition, so the scanning is good quality on that one. And if anybody is interested in having my spreadsheets, I'm very happy to share those with anybody who would actually like them. So that's pretty much it for my talk today. Hopefully you've enjoyed that. A whistle-stop tour through some of my relatives. Any questions?
That was fabulous, Emma. Thank you so much. Why don't you go ahead and drop the screen sharing, and so we can see you and really just get into the questions. Boy, I have one. I have the number for you, and I was taking a full list. I'll keep those the tools that you've mentioned. I'll link those directly in the notes for the talk. One question that I have right away is, I only recently discovered Relative Finder and have found it great fun. It's one of the questions that I have is, clearly it's developed by the labs team at Family Search, or through the university actually at BYU, and have direct access into the Family Search data. What I don't understand is, sometimes it shows me with some relation to some, bigwig back in the past, and doesn't actually, when I go back and look in Family Search, it says, yeah, no, we don't see anything. We don't see any connection. Do you know how those are actually done and how it's different from the Family Search data?
I don't know how it's different, but what I would say is that Family Search, there are quite a lot of duplicates on there.
Yes.
So it is entirely possible that you are looking at a duplicate, or there's something that's not quite right in relationship. Yeah. That would be the most logical answer to that one.
Do you know how it's different from the Roots Tech, your relatives at Roots Tech versus Relative Finder? Because they make a big deal about how, well, you can only do relatives at Roots Tech during Roots Tech.
Yeah.
Is that just the people connection to participants at Roots Tech?
No, so there are two different things. So the connection of the people for Roots Tech relatives is how you are connected to living people. So basically, there are other people who are attending Roots Tech online or in person. The family, the Relative Finder is for famous people.
I see.
Yeah.
I petitioned them recently to, you have royals. We may have distant connections into royals, but to American royalty, it's things like famous people or historical people and things like that. I thought they should, there are databases to things like the revolutionary, veterans of the Civil War and things like that. They're basically documented lists. Then why don't they just put them in there? I don't know why.
They have presidents, presidents' wives, people who are quite famous scientists. There are entertainers is another category. There are various different categories you can go through and find people.
Yeah, these little groups, they're wonderful. So open it up. You all are very welcome to unmute yourselves and go ahead and join in on the conversation. I can also unmute you. I've just discovered this unmute power. Go ahead, Linda.
Thank you very much. My goodness, I've never seen so much history in such a short time. And I'll have to look better to find out, I guess, what's back there in England. I don't think you have any royalty, but you never know, I guess.
Do you know how you came to America?
Yeah, the
Who the first people were?
Yeah, grandpa
okay.
and grandma. Yeah. At the beginning of this, I think he came in 1913, and he worked for a couple of years, and then he went back and married my grandmother in Kent. And I've heard of Tunbridge Wells a lot, so they must lived around there somewhere. So I'll have to get working on this, I guess. Yeah.
Good luck.
Yep. Thank you.
Jude, did you have a comment?
No, just a fabulous talk, Emma. Just, I put in the chat so many wow moments. My goodness me.
Well, it's like, think what it's like for me as well. They're actually my relatives, and I go, really? And it's like, okay, and sort of some of it you think, is that too good to be true? And so you want to actually, because some of the things with relative finder, I'm thinking, yeah, that's really good, I'm related to all these people, and I think maybe I'm not. So but it's an opportunity to do more. And the really good thing I like about doing relative finder is, as I said, is going back further in my own lines, so I can, it's put me back 4 or 5 generations in some of them, which I wouldn't have had that information otherwise.
But I think it's a testament to your rigorous research. It really is.
Thank you.
You mentioned, I love that Mary's statement, her testimony before marriage. That was amazing. So charming. I wonder, were things like that? Do you suppose this was essentially a template that was written for her by a professional? And then is this something that was just done routinely? It was like their thing that they do and bring the bride in and say, yeah, you agree to all of this?
I don't think it would have been like that, because I mean, she was 18 getting married, and I think they were sort of quite a wealthy family, so I don't think she would have been necessarily forced to do anything. I know there were lots of clerical people in the family she married into, certainly, and so it might have been that. And I think people in those days were more religious, more conformist in some way. It's like, if sort of they followed the rules, they didn't have a lot of choice, did they? So they sort of
they sent the ones that didn't off to the Americas.
Or if you didn't like it, at least they had an option to do that. But as a young woman, you wouldn't have. Nope. You would have done what your father chose for you.
Yeah, that's right.
But they remained married for a long time. They had many children. Seemed like they were happy. I mean, that was a lovely description of her character and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he was apparently quite a kindly man as well.
That's nice. Yeah. There's some of these get a little scary in the materials that you find.
Yeah. Actually, whilst we're talking about this, I want to just read you something, if that's okay, because I found a new book yesterday. I was saying about sort of a discovery yesterday. I went to a place called Kenwood House in London. I happened to be there, and I was looking through a secondhand bookshop. We are really, really fortunate in this country. We have an organisation called the National Trust, and there's also one called English Heritage, and most of them have set up secondhand bookshops in the properties that they look after, and people donate books for various different reasons, and they can be quite random, but it's all money making to try and raise revenue to keep the properties going. And I very interested. I like books, and it's like always interested in trying to find things on family history. And I went in and I asked, do you have any books on family history, genealogy? She said, I don't think so. It's not something you get asked for. I'll go and have a look for you. Oh, don't worry, it's fine. And then I was just paying for the other ones. So she brought out a pair to me. It's called The Vicissitudes of Families by Sir Bernard Burke, volumes 1 and 2. And it's like, oh, okay, and so how much are they? Oh no, you can have them. It's like, okay. So I tromped back with them, and on the way home I was reading through it and actually found mention of some of my ancestors in here. And it's like, I was just reading it in the car on the way home, and it's like, Lord de la Pole, having thus by his public services won personal honour and position, now acquired great territorial influence by his marriage with Catherine, the richly endowed daughter and heiress of Sir John Wingfield, Lord of Wingfield in Suffolk, a renowned knight and soldier of the martial era in which he lived. As Lord Chancellor of England, de la Pole inaugurated his legal career after his own fashion by serving as a banneret 40 days in King Richard II's Scottish Wars, where he gained such credit that the king rewarded his fighting chancellor with the grant of the castle, town and manor and honour of Eye, part of the possessions of William de Ufford, late Earl of Suffolk, deceased. And so there's a whole chapter on this family. Basically, this is about families that came from nothing and became quite popular, quite wealthy, and then went to nothing again afterwards for various reasons. And just have to find a whole chapter in there about this, and it talks about him, his father, their characters, and what they actually did. There's so much information. It's amazing. So I got it for free. It's wonderful. So,
and I love that family tree that you found in one of the copies. That was amazing. I've been delighted to see how many books are in the Internet Archive. I had a reference to a book, The History of the Page Family. So I Googled it. And sure enough, the entire book was scanned and in the Internet Archive. And which reminds me of another trick that I discovered, which is there is a tool called tineye.com, which is designed to help copyright owners find, people who are using their work. So that's who pays for them. But in the meantime, you can use it to take any image, drag and drop into it, a little like Google Image Finder, but it doesn't care if it's the actual file or not. It's looking at the image itself, which is a bit different. And it's a great way to see if anybody else has ever posted something about that. It will find it. And then you can go dig and see, well, what was the context? What was their context for that same image? That kind of thing would be very good. Any other questions, comments? Go ahead.
Absolutely the only famous ancestor I have was actually in South Dakota. Yeah, and he came from nothing, which has just reminded me. So he is on my maternal side. He's my 3 times great uncle. And he was superintendent of one of the mines, one of the great big coal mines. And he became a professor through America. He came from a very, typical West Yorkshire lowly weaving family, and he became a coal miner, and he went out to the States. And I think it was at the time when I think it was I can't remember. I think it was Ohio, and there was a college that was taking people to learn agriculture. And there was also there were 2 subjects. There was agriculture and there was engineering. And my hunch is that this great uncle, Joseph Hemingway, went out to do the agriculture, but got into the engineering and coal mining. And he became, in one of the newspapers, it actually writes, Joseph Hemingway, the most astounding professor on both hemispheres.
Wow.
In other words, globally. And he became a superintendent, and he invented the patent. He had a patent for poking. So thanks to America, I have got a famous ancestor. So thank you, everybody.
I think we probably all have if we look.
Probably.
I'm looking now to see if we're related. I think that's from the perspective of the United States as opposed to our cousins up north here in America. So many of our families, as we've talked previously, Jude, have
Mm.
roots back in England, and very often they came, as some of mine did, as indentured servants for having been on the wrong side of a war before they got to America, and then did whatever it is that they did. But Americans, this is where we find our fortune in storytelling. And a lot of us have these classic waves of migration in our family history that, we look at as nation building. And unfortunately, there were many horrific things that happened along the way, and only the happy ones are usually the ones that get told in history. But that's another story.
Any other questions?
I may sneak out there and unmute you all at once. Any other? You have something you're dying to ask.
I just want to thank Emma very much for that. Was really, really interesting. I love to see the wedding material that she had authored. Yes, and all the royal lines. It's very, very interesting. One of our daughters right now, she has published a book about one of my husband's ancestors, and she's done a lot of research. The book, it's got a lot of pictures and that it's almost, well, it's 300 and some pages. And so in September, she and our son-in-law and my husband and I, and probably one of the grandkids will go off to Boston, because so many both my husband and I, on our dad's side, our families came to North America in the early 1600s. So we have a lot of roots there, and being able to pinpoint cemeteries and that on the way that we'll visit, and with stones still there from the 1700s and stuff. Yeah. Anyway, I'm really into family history, obviously.
And
That's
have a look,
fabulous, Roberta.
and have a look and see
Pardon me?
if there are any. Have a look and see if there are any Harlequindans. You never know if that's one of your ancestors.
Yeah, one of my husbands was on the Mayflower. He's documented. He fell off. He was just 17 and fell off, but was rescued on the way over. And so there's quite a bit of documentation about him too. Yeah.
A gateway ancestor.
Yeah,
Yes.
indeed. And Mayflowers is one of the groups in Relative Finder. Roberta, we may be related, because I also have a relative that fell off the boat and got rescued. And it could be the same guy. I can't remember the name off the top of my head, but Harlequindon, I just found as a fourth cousin 8 times removed, Richard Harlequindon, in my family, as a matter of fact, because you mentioned it. So I looked it up.
Excellent.
It's oops, that was the Relative Finder. It's good stuff. And in fact, here in the United States, this formerly known as the Revolutionaries, we have an anniversary coming up in 2026, would be the 250th anniversary of the signing of our Declaration of Independence, with all due respect. And it's a good opportunity for Americans to get excited about what our connections were at that time, because in fact, there's a lot of the roots and the names, once you get into it, just as you demonstrated in following the tree, have so many different connections to be able to go back out there and really understand what it all means, and how that falls into your projects as you go forward.
One of the groups within Relative Finder is the signatories.
Yeah, I know.
Mm.
Yeah, that's a real fun one too. That's right. Like I said, they should have all the Revolutionary War veterans, because they know who they are. At least, yeah, they're still unearthing more. As a matter of fact, they're going in and unearthing more of the African Americans who participated in the Revolutionary War and were active in that era as well, and getting them in there as well, which is good. Again, coming off of our Juneteenth celebrations yesterday.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, one of my great grandfathers was a captain in the Revolutionary War. So he was on that side. And then his son ended up coming up to Canada. So I'm in Toronto, actually.
Ah,
I'm the line that from the line that came up to, but many of the relatives that stayed, they went back and forth all the time.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
indeed, indeed. We are all cousins. How about that?
I think if you go far enough back, we're probably all related anyhow, aren't we?
Absolutely. Well, with that, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this as the conclusion of our first of this wonderful new series. Emma Explores, as we will be diving in, because at the end of the day, if you're doing family history and genealogy projects, there is some family history and genealogy as underlying it all, and discovering the joy of that research is really at the core of it. And I want to thank you so much, Emma, for this entire series, and of course for today's wonderful kickoff.
My
Thank you so
pleasure.
much. I think everyone joins me in that. I am going to end the recording, but all of you are very welcome
Just
to
before
stay
you
to
go, I was just going to give a teaser for the next one.
Yes, please.
So Brick Walls is going to be the next one. Brick Walls and Mysteries.
Excellent.
On the 18th of July.
18th of July, a fabulous day. We will all be here with bells on. And again, I'm going to end the recording so it can start cooking, and we can stay for an after party. Here we go.